They last when Olivia lost her job. Her own coworkers told everyone she was unemployed, broke, and desperate. But while they were destroying her reputation behind closed doors, Olivia was secretly buying shares in the very company they worked for. And the day she walked back into that office as the new owner, nobody was ready for what happened next. Disclaimer: this is a fictional and dramatized story created for entertainment and storytelling purposes only. Any resemblance to real persons, companies, or events is purely coincidental. The day Olivia Carter lost her job at Weston Dynamics, she told herself it was temporary. Companies let people go all the time. Good employees found new opportunities. Life moved on. That was what she kept repeating in her head while carrying a small cardboard box through the parking garage with $27 in her bank account and a fake smile on her face. The autumn air felt cold against her skin as she placed the box in the back seat of her old silver Honda. Inside were a few framed photos, a coffee mug with a chipped handle, and a notebook filled with project ideas that would never be used by the company again. She stood there for a moment, staring at the giant glass building she had worked in for almost 6 years. People inside were still moving from desk to desk, answering emails, attending meetings, laughing near the coffee machines like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, her entire life had just collapsed. Olivia had joined Weston Dynamics at 24 years old. Back then, she believed hard work guaranteed success. She stayed late every night, volunteered for extra projects, and helped coworkers even when nobody asked her to. Managers praised her constantly. She became one of the company's top analysts before turning 30. Her future looked stable. At least that was what she thought. 3 weeks before she was forced out, Olivia accidentally discovered irregular financial reports connected to several senior executives. Numbers didn't match. Expenses were hidden under fake project names. Millions of dollars had disappeared quietly through shell companies she had never heard of before. At first, she assumed it was an accounting mistake. Then, she brought the issue to Daniel Mercer, the company's operations director. That was the biggest mistake she ever made. Daniel had smiled calmly while reviewing the documents in his office. He looked relaxed, almost amused. "You're a smart woman, Olivia," he told her while leaning back in his expensive leather chair. "But sometimes smart people create problems for themselves." She still remembered the strange feeling in her stomach when he said those words. 2 days later, Human Resources called her into a meeting. They claimed her position was being eliminated. No warning. No discussion. No chance to defend herself. Just a printed severance package slid across the table while HR avoided eye contact. Olivia knew it wasn't real downsizing. She knew she was being removed because she had seen something she was never supposed to see. But proving it was impossible. So she walked away quietly. What she didn't know was that losing her job was only the beginning. A week later, her phone started becoming strangely silent. Friends from work stopped replying to messages. Coworkers who once invited her to lunch suddenly disappeared. Even people she considered close became distant overnight. Then the rumors started. Her cousin Vanessa called her one evening, sounding uncomfortable. "Olivia, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are you okay financially?" Olivia frowned. "Why wouldn't I be?" There was an awkward pause. "I heard you got fired." Olivia's chest tightened instantly. "I didn't get fired." "That's not what people are saying." "What are they saying?" Vanessa hesitated before answering. "They're saying you messed up major company accounts, and they had to let you go. Someone even said he's been unemployed for almost a year." Olivia nearly dropped her phone. "A year?" "I was literally working there last week." "I know," Vanessa whispered. "But everyone keeps repeating it." That conversation was only the start. Soon, the lies spread everywhere. Former coworkers told mutual friends she had become unstable. Someone claimed she had been begging for work. Another person said she got fired after having emotional breakdowns in meetings. Every rumor became worse than the last. And somehow, people believed them. One afternoon, Olivia entered a small cafe near her apartment and overheard 2 former colleagues talking at a nearby table. She always acted smarter than everyone, one woman whispered. I heard she's completely broke now, the other replied. Olivia stood frozen while holding her coffee. Neither woman noticed she was standing behind them. The humiliation burned through her chest like fire. She left without ordering anything. The worst part wasn't the lies themselves. It was realizing how quickly people enjoyed believing them. Months earlier, those same coworkers smiled in her face every day. They praised her work. They invited her to office parties. Now they treated her like a joke. As weeks passed, the rumors began affecting her real life. A recruiter canceled a final interview after hearing concerning feedback. Her landlord casually asked if she needed more time to pay rent. Even her own aunt suggested she lower her standards and apply for entry-level retail jobs. Nobody asked for her side of the story. Nobody defended her. Olivia spent nights sitting alone in her apartment, replaying every moment in her mind. Anger slowly replaced sadness. She started realizing the rumors were too organized to be random. Someone inside Weston Dynamics was controlling the narrative deliberately. And deep down, she already knew who it was. Daniel Mercer. He had power, influence, and loyal executives protecting him. If he wanted to destroy her reputation, nobody inside the company would stop him. One Friday night, Olivia received an invitation to a former coworker's engagement party. At first, she almost declined, but a small part of her hoped maybe things had been exaggerated. Maybe people would act normal face to face. The party was held at an expensive rooftop restaurant downtown filled with music, laughter, and glowing city lights. The moment Olivia walked inside, conversations became quieter. People stared. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked entertained. Then Daniel Mercer appeared near the bar holding a glass of champagne. A slow smile spread across his face when he saw her. Well, he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Look who finally came out of hiding. A few people laughed nervously. Olivia forced herself to stay calm. Daniel stepped closer. How's unemployment treating you? More laughter followed. She looked around the room hoping someone would say something. Nobody did. Not one person. One coworker even smirked while avoiding eye contact. In that moment, Olivia understood something painful. These people had already decided who she was. The truth no longer mattered. Daniel raised his glass casually. Maybe next time you'll learn not to overestimate yourself. The room stayed silent. Olivia felt humiliation, rage, and heartbreak crashing together inside her chest. But instead of crying or arguing, she simply looked directly into Daniel's eyes and smiled faintly. Because, for the first time since losing her job, fear had disappeared completely. And in its place, something far more dangerous had begun to grow. For weeks after the engagement party, Olivia barely left her apartment unless absolutely necessary. Every conversation felt fake. Every phone notification made her anxious. She stopped checking social media because people from Weston Dynamics continued posting passive-aggressive comments and inside jokes clearly aimed at her. Some former coworkers even shared motivational quotes about hard work and professionalism, while pretending they weren't mocking her publicly. At first, the isolation hurt more than the lies themselves. But eventually, the silence became useful. Because while everyone believed Olivia Carter was unemployed, humiliated, and financially ruined, nobody knew the truth. Not even close. 3 years earlier, long before the rumors and betrayal, Olivia had quietly started investing money on the side. It began as a simple habit after watching her father lose everything during a company bankruptcy. When she was younger, she learned early that depending entirely on one employer was dangerous. No matter how loyal you were, companies protected themselves first. So while working long hours at Weston Dynamics, Olivia spent her nights studying markets, startups, and technology trends. Most people wasted weekends partying or scrolling endlessly online. Olivia stayed home learning about cybersecurity, software development, and venture capital. At first, the profits were small. A few $100s here and there, then a few thousand. She reinvested every dollar carefully and stayed patient while others chased fast success. Over time, her portfolio slowly grew larger. But one investment changed everything. 2 years earlier, Olivia invested in a tiny cybersecurity startup, started by 3 former engineers, working out of a cramped warehouse office. The company looked insignificant at the time. Most investors ignored it completely. But Olivia saw potential nobody else noticed. The founders were brilliant, disciplined, and obsessed with protecting financial systems from large-scale cyber attacks. She believed the world would eventually depend heavily on digital security. She was right. Less than 18 months later, the startup secured a massive government defense contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Overnight, the company exploded in value, and so did Olivia's investment. By the time Weston Dynamics forced her out, Olivia quietly had more money than most of the executives who mocked her. Yet nobody suspected anything because she never lived like a wealthy person. She still drove her old Honda, still rented the same apartment, still wore simple clothes. People judged her entire worth based on appearances, and Olivia allowed them to. That became her greatest advantage. One rainy afternoon, Olivia sat at her kitchen table reviewing financial reports on her laptop, while thunder echoed outside her apartment windows. Her phone buzzed suddenly. It was a message from Marcus Hill, her former coworker, her former best friend. "Hey, haven't heard from you lately. Hope you're hanging in there." Olivia stared at the screen for several seconds. Marcus had known her for almost 5 years. They ate lunch together constantly, stayed late working on projects, and even celebrated birthdays together. Yet during the rumors, Marcus never defended her publicly once, not once. She typed slowly. "Funny how everyone disappeared after I left." 3 dots appeared immediately. "People are just talking. You know how offices are." Olivia laughed bitterly to herself. Talking? No. They were destroying her reputation deliberately. She locked her phone without replying further. Later that evening, Olivia opened a private video call with one of her business partners, Ethan Cole, a financial strategist who helped manage several of her investments anonymously. "You've been quiet lately," Ethan said. "Busy. You mean angry?" Olivia leaned back in her chair silently. Ethan studied her expression carefully through the screen. "You're thinking about Weston Dynamics again. They ruined my name." "They're panicking," Ethan replied calmly. "Their stock is unstable." That caught her attention instantly. "What do you mean?" Ethan pulled up financial graphs on the shared screen. 3 major investors quietly pulled out this month. Revenue projections are falling. Internal leadership issues are leaking into the market. Olivia narrowed her eyes. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that executives are trying to hide losses." A cold feeling settled in her chest. So the corruption she discovered inside the company had grown even worse after she left. Ethan continued speaking. "If this keeps happening, the company could become vulnerable to acquisition." Olivia stared at the graphs carefully while her mind raced. Acquire Weston Dynamics? The thought sounded impossible at first. The company was massive. Thousands of employees, international contracts, decades of influence. But as she looked deeper into the numbers, she realized something important. The company was weaker than it appeared publicly. Much weaker. And Daniel Mercer was still running operations. A dangerous idea slowly formed in her mind. One that scared even her. Over the next several weeks, Olivia became obsessed with learning everything happening inside Weston Dynamics. Through former contacts and quiet research, she discovered ongoing leadership conflicts, disappearing clients, and suspicious accounting practices hidden beneath public reports. The company was bleeding money, yet executives kept pretending everything was under control. One night around midnight, Olivia received an unexpected call from Mia Bennett, a former financial analyst from Weston Dynamics. Mia sounded nervous. "Can we meet privately?" The next evening, they met at a quiet restaurant far from downtown. Mia kept glancing around anxiously before speaking. "You were right about the company," she whispered. Olivia remained calm. "About what exactly?" Mia lowered her voice further. "They're hiding millions in losses." Olivia felt her heartbeat quicken. "How do you know?" "Because they forced our department to manipulate reports before quarterly earnings. Olivia stared at her carefully. Who ordered it? Mia hesitated. Daniel Mercer. There it was again. His name. Always his name. Mia continued nervously. People inside the company are scared. Some executives are trying to leave before everything collapses. And the board? They're desperate. Olivia leaned forward slowly. How desperate? Mia swallowed hard. Desperate enough to consider selling part of the company if investors keep pulling out. Silence filled the table. Outside the restaurant windows, headlights passed through the rain-covered streets while Olivia processed everything carefully. Daniel thought he had won. He thought humiliating her publicly protected him, but he never imagined the person he tried to destroy might someday become powerful enough to destroy him instead. For the first time since losing her job, Olivia saw a clear path forward. Not through revenge alone. Through control. If Weston Dynamics collapsed under corrupt leadership, someone else would eventually buy it anyway. Investors only cared about survival, so why not her? Why shouldn't she take ownership of the company that sacrificed her to protect criminals? Why shouldn't she become the person sitting in Daniel Mercer's office instead? The more Olivia thought about it, the more the idea stopped feeling impossible and started feeling inevitable. That night, after returning home, Olivia stood alone beside her apartment window, watching rain slide down the glass, while the city lights flickered below. Months earlier, she had been humiliated, isolated, and treated like a failure. Now, quietly and patiently, she was preparing for something nobody around her could even imagine. And somewhere inside Weston Dynamics, Daniel Mercer was still laughing about the unemployed woman whose life he believed he had destroyed forever. Over the next 2 months, Weston Dynamics began falling apart faster than anyone expected. News articles started questioning the company's financial stability. Investors grew nervous after several important contracts disappeared unexpectedly. Online business forums filled with rumors about internal corruption and leadership failures. Employees inside the company became increasingly anxious as departments quietly reduced budgets and delayed salaries. But Daniel Mercer continued pretending everything was fine. Every interview he gave sounded polished and confident. He smiled for cameras, promised strong recovery plans, and blamed temporary market instability for the company's struggles. Most people believed him. Olivia didn't. She knew the truth hidden underneath those carefully rehearsed speeches. Weston Dynamics was bleeding money from years of corruption, fake reporting, and reckless executive decisions. The company looked powerful from the outside, but internally it was collapsing piece by piece. And Olivia was watching all of it happen quietly from the shadows. Late one evening, she sat inside a private conference room at Blackridge Capital, the investment firm managing her acquisitions anonymously. Large financial charts covered the digital screen, while several analysts reviewed company projections. Ethan Cole stood near the window holding a tablet. "We now control almost 9% of Weston Dynamics shares," he said calmly. Olivia looked up sharply. 9% already? We moved faster than expected because investors are panicking. Many are desperate to sell before the stock crashes further. Olivia folded her arms while staring at the screen. The falling numbers almost looked unreal. Months earlier, Weston Dynamics was considered untouchable in the tech industry. Now shareholders were abandoning it like a sinking ship. "How long before the board notices?" she asked. Ethan gave a small smile. "They already noticed. They just don't know it's you." That secrecy mattered more than anything. Every purchase had been carefully hidden through private investment groups and holding companies connected to Blackridge Capital. Olivia's name appeared nowhere publicly. To Weston Dynamics executives, the new investors were simply wealthy outsiders buying discounted shares during a crisis. Exactly what Olivia wanted them to believe. She walked toward the screen slowly. "What happens if we reach controlling ownership?" Ethan glanced at her carefully before answering. "The board will have no choice but to negotiate." For a moment, silence filled the room. Even now, part of Olivia still struggled to believe how far things had gone. Less than a year earlier, she was being mocked publicly for supposedly being unemployed and unstable. Now she was preparing to take ownership of the very company that destroyed her reputation. The irony almost felt unreal. Her phone suddenly buzzed across the table. Unknown number. Olivia answered cautiously. Hello? A nervous male voice replied immediately. Olivia, it's Ryan. She recognized the name instantly. Ryan Fletcher worked in Weston Dynamics accounting department. What do you want? You were right about Daniel Mercer. Olivia's expression hardened. What happened? Ryan lowered his voice. The company's preparing emergency meetings with outside buyers. Senior leadership thinks bankruptcy could happen within a year if funding doesn't improve. Olivia exchanged a quick glance with Ethan. This was happening even faster than expected. Ryan continued nervously. People are scared inside the company. Some executives are already blaming each other. Why are you telling me this? A long pause followed. Because they blamed you for everything while knowing you were innocent. For the first time in months, Olivia felt a strange sense of validation hearing someone from inside admit the truth openly. But emotions no longer controlled her decisions. Strategy did. After ending the call, Olivia turned toward Ethan calmly. Set up the meeting. 3 days later, Weston Dynamics officially announced a private emergency board meeting with potential investors interested in acquiring controlling ownership. The announcement immediately triggered panic throughout the business world. Financial news channels speculated non-stop about the company's future, while employees feared massive layoffs. Inside Weston headquarters, tensions spread through every hallway. Daniel Mercer barely slept anymore. Dark circles had formed under his eyes from weeks of stress, but he still forced confidence in front of employees. He assured everyone the company remained stable. Nobody fully believed him anymore. The emergency board meeting was scheduled at an expensive downtown hotel under heavy security. Only senior executives, board members, and approved investors were allowed inside. Olivia arrived wearing a tailored black suit with her hair tied neatly back. 2 Blackridge Capital attorneys walked beside her as they entered the massive conference room overlooking the city skyline. The room fell strangely quiet the moment she walked in. Several executives recognized her instantly. Confused whispers spread around the table. Then Daniel Mercer entered through the side doors while reviewing paperwork. At first, he didn't notice her. But the second he looked up, his entire body froze. The color drained from his face immediately. You, he whispered. Olivia met his stare calmly without speaking. For several seconds, Daniel looked genuinely unable to process what he was seeing. One of the board members frowned in confusion. You know each other? Before Daniel could answer, the chairman spoke. Mr. Mercer, this is Olivia Carter representing Blackridge Capital. The room became completely silent. Daniel stared at her like he had seen a ghost. Olivia watched panic slowly appear behind his eyes. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. Pure fear. Daniel forced an awkward laugh while adjusting his tie nervously. There must be some misunderstanding. The chairman shook his head. Blackridge Capital currently holds significant ownership shares in Weston Dynamics. Daniel's breathing visibly changed. Olivia finally spoke for the first time. No misunderstanding at all. The board chairman continued reviewing documents calmly. Blackridge Capital is prepared to discuss acquisition terms for controlling ownership of Weston Dynamics effective immediately. A low wave of shocked murmurs spread around the room. One executive nearly dropped his pen. Another leaned back, staring at Olivia in disbelief. Daniel looked completely shattered. Just months earlier, he publicly humiliated her at parties, mocked her unemployment, and convinced others she was worthless. Now she sat across from him as the woman preparing to buy the company he helped destroy. Olivia noticed several executives avoiding eye contact with her entirely. Some recognized exactly who she was now. Others looked terrified, realizing the rumors they spread about her had been lies all along. Daniel suddenly stood from his chair. This is insane, he snapped. She doesn't belong here. Olivia remained perfectly calm. The chairman frowned sharply. Mr. Mercer, Blackridge Capital is currently our largest negotiating investor group. Daniel looked around desperately for support. Nobody spoke. Not one person defended him. The same executives who once laughed beside him now sat in complete silence protecting themselves. Olivia almost smiled seeing it happen. Because for the first time since her life collapsed, the balance of power had completely changed. And Daniel Mercer finally understood exactly how dangerous the woman he underestimated had become. The emergency board meeting ended in complete chaos. Executives argued across the conference table while attorneys whispered urgently to investors in the corners of the room. Several board members looked terrified after realizing how much control Blackridge Capital already possessed inside Weston Dynamics. Financial projections continued worsening every week, and without outside funding, the company's collapse seemed inevitable. Olivia remained calm through all of it. She sat quietly reviewing documents while Daniel Mercer slowly unraveled in front of everyone. At one point, he even slammed his hand against the table. "This company cannot fall into her hands," he snapped angrily. One elderly board member adjusted his glasses and sighed. "We don't have many options left, Daniel." The sentence hit him like a punch. For years, Daniel controlled every important decision inside Weston Dynamics. Employees feared him. Executives protected him. Investors trusted him. Now those same people were preparing to abandon him to save themselves. By the end of the meeting, the board officially accepted Blackridge Capital's acquisition proposal, pending final legal approval. Olivia Carter had just secured controlling ownership of Weston Dynamics. Yet the most shocking part came afterward. Olivia requested one specific condition before signing the final agreement. Every current senior executive had to remain employed temporarily during the transition period, especially Daniel Mercer. Several attorneys looked confused. Even Ethan Cole quietly asked her later, "Why keep him?" Olivia stared out the hotel window at the city lights below. "Because I want him close enough to watch everything collapse." The next morning, news of the acquisition exploded across financial media. Employees flooded company group chats with confusion and panic. Nobody understood who Blackridge Capital truly was. Rumors spread wildly throughout every department. Some believed foreign investors had taken over. Others feared mass layoffs were coming. Daniel Mercer spent the entire morning locked inside executive meetings trying to maintain control, but internally he was terrified. Olivia could see it clearly now. The confidence he once carried so effortlessly had disappeared completely. 3 days later, Olivia officially entered Weston Dynamics headquarters for the first time since losing her job. The moment she stepped through the front entrance, the entire lobby became silent. Employees stopped talking. Several workers near the reception desk stared openly in shock. Others immediately looked away in embarrassment after recognizing her. Olivia walked calmly across the marble floor, wearing a fitted dark coat, while security staff escorted her toward the executive elevators. Whispers followed her everywhere. "That's Olivia Carter. She owns the company now? I thought she got fired. No way." Each whispered sentence felt strangely satisfying after months of humiliation. The same people who once believed every lie about her now looked completely lost. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, Olivia immediately saw Daniel Mercer standing outside the conference room speaking aggressively to 2 senior managers. The moment he noticed her approaching, his voice stopped abruptly. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Daniel forced a tight smile that looked painfully unnatural. "Welcome back," he said coldly. Olivia kept walking toward him without slowing down. "It's good to be back." Several executives nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. Daniel attempted to regain control of the situation quickly. "Everyone, let's remain professional during this transition," he announced loudly, pretending confidence he clearly no longer felt. Olivia looked directly into his eyes. Professionalism would be a refreshing change around here. One manager almost choked, trying not to react. Daniel's jaw tightened instantly, but he stayed silent. That silence alone shocked Olivia more than anything else. Months earlier, he openly mocked and humiliated her without fear. Now, he carefully measured every word because the power structure had changed completely. Olivia walked past him toward the executive offices at the end of the hallway. Toward his office. By noon, company-wide emails officially announced leadership restructuring under new ownership. Executive permissions were immediately reviewed, financial accounts frozen temporarily, and internal investigations quietly launched. Then came the moment Daniel never expected. His executive access privileges were revoked. Not terminated completely, just suspended. Enough to humiliate him publicly. When Daniel attempted entering several restricted financial systems later that afternoon, security locked him out instantly. Employees noticed immediately. Whispers spread through the building within minutes. Daniel Mercer was losing control. Olivia observed everything carefully from inside the CEO office that once belonged to him. The room looked almost identical to the way she remembered months earlier. Expensive furniture, polished wood shelves, city skyline windows, and the same leather chair where Daniel once warned her not to create problems for herself. Now Olivia sat in that chair instead. The irony felt almost unreal. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Ethan entered carrying several folders. "You need to see this." Olivia opened the first folder slowly. Inside were internal financial reports hidden from investors for years. Fake invoices. Manipulated budgets. Payments to non-existent consulting firms. Millions of dollars had quietly disappeared through complex financial channels. The corruption inside Weston Dynamics was far worse than Olivia originally imagined. "This alone could destroy half the executive board," Ethan said quietly. Olivia continued flipping through documents carefully. Then she stopped suddenly at one specific signature. Daniel Mercer. His approval appeared across multiple suspicious transactions. Olivia felt anger rise slowly in her chest. Not because she was surprised. Because he had destroyed innocent people to protect himself. Employees lost jobs while executives stole money behind closed doors. Investors were lied to repeatedly. Entire departments suffered because corrupt leadership cared more about power than consequences. And when Olivia discovered the truth months earlier, they destroyed her reputation before she could expose them. Ethan leaned against the desk thoughtfully. "There's enough here for criminal investigations already." "Not yet," Olivia replied calmly. "You want more evidence?" "I want everything." Over the following weeks, Olivia quietly launched deeper internal audits throughout Weston Dynamics. External forensic accountants reviewed years of hidden transactions while attorneys prepared legal cases behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Daniel Mercer grew increasingly unstable. He started yelling during meetings, avoiding certain executives, staying late inside his office long after most employees left. Fear was consuming him piece by piece. One evening, Olivia walked through the nearly empty office building after midnight while reviewing investigation updates on her tablet. Most floors were dark, except for scattered office lights glowing faintly across departments still working overtime. As she passed the financial division hallway, she noticed someone sitting alone near the records room. A woman. Nervous. Waiting. The moment Olivia approached closer, the woman stood quickly. It was Daniel Mercer's executive assistant, Olivia Bennett. Her hands trembled slightly while holding a small black flash drive. "I need to talk to you privately," she whispered. Olivia immediately realized something important the second she saw fear in the woman's eyes. Someone inside the company was finally ready to tell the truth. Olivia Bennett kept glancing nervously down the empty hallway, as if she expected someone to appear at any second. The dim office lights reflected against the glass walls around them, while the rest of Weston Dynamics remained almost completely silent. It was nearly midnight, and most employees had gone home hours earlier. Only fear remained awake inside the building. Olivia Carter studied the woman carefully before speaking. "You said you needed to talk privately." Olivia Bennett swallowed hard and nodded. "Not here." Without another word, she led Olivia toward a smaller conference room near the back of the executive floor. The room was dark, except for the faint city lights glowing through the windows. Olivia Bennett locked the door immediately after entering. That alone told Olivia how serious this was. The assistant's hands shook while placing a small black flash drive onto the conference table between them. "What's this?" Olivia asked quietly. Olivia Bennett looked pale. "Everything." The room suddenly felt colder. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Olivia Carter slowly pulled out a laptop from her bag and inserted the flash drive carefully. Several encrypted folders appeared instantly on the screen. Thousands of files, emails, financial reports, private recordings, confidential payment records. Olivia's heartbeat quickened slightly as she opened the first folder. The deeper she looked, the worse everything became. Hidden offshore accounts connected directly to Weston executives, bribes disguised as consulting fees, fraudulent contracts worth millions of dollars, entire departments used to cover illegal transactions. Daniel Mercer's name appeared repeatedly throughout the files. Approvals, transfers, private conversations, secret instructions. He wasn't simply aware of the corruption. He was helping run it. Olivia Bennett stood silently near the door, while Olivia continued opening documents one after another. Every file revealed a company operating more like a criminal organization than a technology corporation. "How long have you known?" Olivia finally asked without looking up. The assistant lowered her eyes. "Longer than I want to admit. Why come to me now?" Tears slowly formed in the woman's eyes. "Because innocent people kept getting hurt while they protected themselves." Olivia stopped scrolling. The pain in her voice sounded genuine. Olivia Bennett sat down slowly across from her. "I started working for Daniel 5 years ago. At first, I thought he was strict but fair. Then, I began noticing strange transactions and hidden meetings. Whenever employees asked questions, they disappeared from projects or got pushed out." Olivia remained silent while listening carefully. The assistant continued quietly. "When you discovered the accounting issues months ago, Daniel panicked." Olivia looked up sharply. "He talked about me?" "All the time." A heavy silence filled the room. Olivia Bennett took a shaky breath before continuing. "He believed you were smart enough to expose everything. That terrified him." Olivia clenched her jaw. "So he destroyed my reputation first." The assistant nodded slowly. Then she pointed toward one specific audio file on the laptop screen. "You need to hear that." Olivia clicked the recording carefully. At first, only background office noise played through the speakers. Then voices became clearer. Daniel Mercer's voice. Olivia recognized it instantly. "She's becoming a problem," Daniel said casually. Another male executive laughed softly. "Then get rid of her." "We already are," Daniel replied. "HR handled the termination this morning." A third voice joined in. "What if she talks?" Daniel laughed. "That's why we started the rumors already." Olivia felt her stomach tighten instantly. The recording continued. "Nobody listens to unemployed failures," Daniel said confidently. "By the time she realizes what's happening, her reputation will already be destroyed." Several men laughed together in the recording. Then Daniel added something that made Olivia's blood run cold. "She always thought she was smarter than everyone else. Now she'll learn what happens when you threaten people above your level." The recording ended. Silence filled the conference room. Olivia stared at the laptop screen without moving. Months of humiliation suddenly replayed through her mind all at once. The whispers. The mockery. Friends abandoning her. People treating her like she was worthless. It had all been planned deliberately. Every rumor, every lie, every humiliation. Not random office gossip. A coordinated attack. Olivia slowly closed the laptop while forcing herself to stay calm. Inside, rage burned through her chest like fire. Olivia Bennett watched her nervously. "I'm sorry." Olivia looked at her carefully. "Why didn't you stop them?" The assistant looked devastated by the question. "I was scared." That answer lingered heavily between them because Olivia understood it completely. Fear controlled people inside Weston Dynamics. Fear kept employees silent while corruption spread everywhere. Daniel Mercer built his entire power system around intimidation. Anyone who threatened him became a target. Olivia leaned back slowly in her chair. "With this evidence, I could destroy the entire executive board tomorrow." Olivia Bennett nodded nervously. "There's enough there for criminal charges." Part of Olivia wanted exactly that. Go directly to the authorities. Expose everything immediately. Watch Daniel Mercer get arrested publicly. But another part of her wanted something bigger. Something worse. She wanted the truth revealed in a way nobody could ignore or hide from. A public collapse. Olivia reopened the files and continued reviewing them for nearly 2 hours. Some documents exposed bribed government inspectors. Others revealed executives secretly moving company money into private accounts while employees faced layoffs. The greed was endless, yet one detail caught Olivia's attention more than anything else. Several executives besides Daniel Mercer were involved deeply in the fraud. Board members, financial officers, legal advisors, people who publicly acted respectable while privately destroying lives for money. Weston Dynamics had become rotten from the inside long before Olivia ever discovered the first suspicious reports. Near 2 in the morning, Olivia Bennett finally stood up slowly. "There's one more thing you should know." Olivia looked toward her. "Daniel thinks you're planning to fire him." Olivia almost smiled faintly. "He should be worried about much more than that." The assistant hesitated before speaking again. "He's deleting files." That changed everything immediately. Olivia straightened in her chair. "What kind of files?" "Anything connected to financial records. He's panicking." Olivia's expression hardened instantly. Fear was finally breaking him apart. Good. Because desperate people made mistakes. And mistakes expose truths. Olivia closed the laptop carefully and removed the flash drive. "You did the right thing coming to me." Olivia Bennett looked uncertain. "Did I?" "Yes." The assistant walked slowly toward the door before stopping suddenly. "He's dangerous when cornered," she whispered quietly. Then she left. Olivia remained alone inside the dark conference room while city lights shimmered beyond the windows. The flash drive sat in her hand like a loaded weapon. Months earlier, she had been powerless, while others controlled the narrative about her life. Now, everything had changed. She finally possessed proof strong enough to destroy Daniel Mercer completely. Not just professionally. Legally. Personally. Permanently. But what mattered most wasn't revenge anymore. It was making sure every person who participated in the lies faced consequences publicly. Olivia slowly stood and walked toward the window overlooking the sleeping city below. Somewhere inside the building, Daniel Mercer still believed he could survive this. He still believed power and influence would protect him the way they always had before. What he didn't understand was that the moment Olivia received that flash drive, his downfall had already begun. For the next 3 weeks, Olivia said nothing publicly. That silence terrified Daniel Mercer more than any direct threat ever could. Inside Weston Dynamics, tension spread through every department like poison. Executives whispered behind closed doors. Emergency legal meetings happened almost daily. Financial investigators quietly reviewed years of hidden transactions while employees sensed something catastrophic approaching. Meanwhile, Olivia moved carefully and patiently. She attended meetings normally, reviewed company restructuring plans, spoke calmly with investors. From the outside, she looked completely focused on saving Weston Dynamics. But privately, she was preparing something far bigger. The company's annual investor gala was approaching. The largest corporate event of the year. Hundreds of investors, journalists, executives, and business partners would attend. Media coverage was already scheduled across major financial networks. Daniel Mercer viewed the gala as his last opportunity to regain control publicly. If he appeared confident enough, perhaps investors would calm down. Perhaps the rumors about corruption would fade before becoming scandals. He had no idea Olivia planned to destroy him in front of everyone. 3 nights before the event, Ethan Cole entered Olivia's office carrying fresh investigation reports. "We confirmed everything," he said quietly. "The evidence is airtight." Olivia looked up from her desk. How many executives are involved? At least 9 directly, possibly more. She leaned back slowly. "And Daniel?" Ethan placed another folder in front of her. "Worse than we thought." Inside were new financial transfers connected to offshore gambling accounts, hidden payments, and fraudulent contracts personally approved by Daniel Mercer. Some transactions were dated only weeks before the company acquisition. Even while Weston Dynamics collapsed financially, Daniel continued stealing money. Olivia stared silently at the documents for several moments. Then she closed the folder. Prepare everything for the gala. Ethan studied her carefully. You're certain about doing this publicly? Yes. Once it starts, there's no controlling the fallout. Olivia's eyes remained cold and steady. That's the point. The night of the investor gala arrived with flashing cameras, luxury cars, and reporters crowding outside the Grand Crescent Hotel downtown. The ballroom inside glittered with crystal chandeliers, gold decorations, and giant digital screens displaying the Weston Dynamics logo proudly across the walls. To outsiders, the event looked glamorous, successful, powerful. But underneath the expensive suits and fake smiles, fear infected nearly everyone connected to the company. Olivia arrived quietly wearing a fitted black evening dress with silver jewelry and minimal makeup. The moment she entered the ballroom, conversations shifted immediately. People stared openly. Some investors approached politely, congratulating her on the company acquisition. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Many former coworkers looked deeply uncomfortable seeing her standing there with complete authority now. Olivia noticed every reaction carefully. At the far side of the ballroom, Daniel Mercer stood speaking with several board members near the champagne bar. His smile looked strained and unnatural. Sweat glistened slightly along his forehead despite the cool air inside the room. When his eyes finally landed on Olivia, his entire expression tightened. Fear again. Always fear now. He walked toward her carefully while trying to appear calm. You look confident tonight, he said quietly. Olivia gave a faint smile. Shouldn't I? Daniel lowered his voice further. You're making a mistake pushing this company too hard. She stared directly into his eyes. No, Daniel. The mistake was underestimating me. For a brief moment, genuine panic flashed across his face before he quickly forced another smile as reporters passed nearby. The ballroom lights dimmed suddenly as the event officially began. Guests slowly moved toward their seats while cameras positioned themselves near the main stage. Investors murmured quietly while waiters carried drinks between tables. Daniel sat near the front beside several nervous executives. Olivia stood backstage calmly reviewing one final presentation file on a tablet. Ethan approached carefully. Last chance to reconsider. She handed him the tablet. I've spent months reconsidering. Then she walked onto the stage. Applause filled the ballroom automatically as cameras focused toward her. Olivia stood confidently beneath the bright lights, while giant Weston Dynamics logos glowed behind her across the screens. Good evening, she began calmly. The room slowly quieted. Tonight marks a new chapter for Weston Dynamics. Investors nodded politely while journalists typed notes. Olivia continued speaking with perfect control. For years, this company represented innovation, trust, and leadership. Daniel sat motionless near the front. But unfortunately, Olivia continued, the truth behind Weston Dynamics has been hidden from all of you. The ballroom grew quieter instantly. Several executives shifted nervously in their seats. Olivia pressed a small remote in her hand. The giant screen behind her suddenly changed. Private financial documents appeared publicly for the first time. Gossip spread across the ballroom immediately. Charts showed hidden losses, fraudulent transactions, offshore accounts, bribery payments. Journalists began whispering urgently while cameras zoomed toward the screens. Daniel's face turned pale instantly. What is this? One investor shouted. Olivia remained calm. This, she said clearly, is the truth. Another click of the remote. Private executive emails filled the giant screens next. Messages discussing fraud. Instructions for deleting records. Plans to manipulate investors. The room erupted into chaos. Several board members stood up immediately. This is outrageous. You can't release confidential files. Daniel suddenly rose from his chair. Turn this off right now, he shouted. But Olivia ignored him completely. Then came the final piece. The audio recording. Daniel's own voice echoed loudly throughout the ballroom speakers. She's becoming a problem. People froze instantly. We already started the rumors. Journalists rushed closer toward the stage. Nobody listens to unemployed failures. The entire ballroom exploded with shocked reactions. Investors shouted angrily across tables. Executives looked horrified. Several reporters immediately began live broadcasts from inside the event itself. Daniel stood completely frozen while his own words destroyed him publicly. Then Olivia spoke one final sentence into the microphone. The leadership of Weston Dynamics intentionally destroyed innocent employees to protect corporate corruption. Daniel pointed toward her desperately. She's lying. But his panic only made him look guiltier. Within minutes, hotel security entered the ballroom alongside financial investigators and police officers already waiting outside. Someone from the legal team had clearly prepared for immediate action. Several executives attempted leaving through side exits. Officers stopped them instantly. Daniel looked around wildly as cameras surrounded him from every direction. Nobody defended him now. Not the executives, not the investors, not the employees who once feared him. He looked completely alone for the first time in years. An officer approached him calmly. "Daniel Mercer, you are under investigation for financial fraud and corporate misconduct." The ballroom watched in stunned silence as handcuffs closed around his wrists. Camera flashes exploded nonstop. Daniel turned toward Olivia one final time while officers escorted him away. His face no longer showed arrogance, only disbelief, as if he still couldn't understand how the woman he mocked publicly had become the person responsible for destroying everything he built. But even after the ballroom emptied and police removed executives one by one, Olivia's night was far from over. Because waiting quietly near the exit stood a young woman holding an envelope tightly against her chest. And the moment Olivia saw the fear in her eyes, she knew another secret was about to surface. The ballroom slowly emptied after midnight, but the atmosphere still felt heavy with shock and chaos. Reporters crowded outside the hotel entrance under flashing camera lights, while police escorted Weston Dynamics executives into waiting vehicles one by one. News anchors stood near the sidewalks delivering live updates as social media exploded with clips from Olivia's presentation. Inside the hotel, employees and investors whispered nervously about everything they had just witnessed. Some looked angry. Others looked embarrassed for believing the lies surrounding Olivia for so long, but Olivia barely noticed any of it. Her attention stayed fixed on the young woman standing quietly near the ballroom exit, clutching a brown envelope tightly against her chest. She looked terrified. Long, dark hair framed her pale face while tears filled her eyes. Olivia recognized her immediately. Ava Mercer, Daniel Mercer's daughter. Olivia remembered seeing her years earlier during company holiday parties and executive events. Ava had always seemed quiet compared to her father's loud personality. She usually stayed close to her mother and avoided attention whenever possible. Now she stood alone in the nearly empty hallway, looking completely broken. Olivia approached cautiously. "Ava?" The young woman nodded slowly. "Can we talk somewhere private?" A few minutes later, they sat inside a small lounge area near the back of the hotel. The noise from reporters outside sounded distant now. Ava kept staring down at the envelope in her hands without speaking. Olivia studied her carefully. "You shouldn't be here tonight." Ava gave a weak laugh filled with sadness. "I had to come." For several seconds, silence lingered between them. Then Ava finally looked up. "My father ruined your life." Olivia said nothing. The pain in Ava's expression already said enough. "But there's something you need to understand," Ava continued quietly. She slid the envelope across the table. Olivia opened it slowly. Inside were medical bills, overdue debt notices, and hospital records dating back several years. Olivia frowned slightly while reviewing the documents. "What is this?" "My mother's treatment records." Olivia looked back at her. Ava's voice trembled as she explained. 3 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with a severe neurological illness. The treatments were extremely expensive. Insurance barely covered anything. Olivia remained silent while listening carefully. "At first, my father tried handling it honestly," Ava continued. "He borrowed money, took personal loans, sold investments, but eventually things got worse. Olivia slowly connected the pieces in her mind. The stolen company money. Ava lowered her eyes shamefully. He told himself it was temporary, just enough to cover medical costs until things stabilized. Olivia leaned back quietly. Part of her wanted to feel satisfaction hearing Daniel finally exposed completely. Instead, she felt something more complicated. Because desperation made people dangerous. Ava wiped tears from her face before continuing. But that's not the full story. Olivia waited. My father changed after my mother became sick, Ava whispered. He stopped sleeping, started drinking constantly. Then someone introduced him to gambling. Olivia's expression hardened slightly. Gambling? Ava nodded. At first he won money and believed he could fix everything quickly. But then he started losing huge amounts. The room suddenly felt heavier. He kept trying to recover the losses, Ava said quietly. That's when the fraud inside Weston Dynamics became much worse. Olivia stared at the medical records thoughtfully. Daniel Mercer hadn't started as some evil mastermind controlling a criminal empire. He became trapped gradually through fear, desperation, greed, and pride. But understanding how someone falls apart wasn't the same as forgiving what they became. Ava looked directly at Olivia for the first time. When you discovered the financial issues months ago, my father panicked completely. Olivia's jaw tightened. He thought exposing the truth would destroy our family. So he destroyed my life instead. Ava closed her eyes briefly. Yes. The honesty hurt more than excuses would have. For months, Olivia imagined Daniel as a cold, calculating villain without emotions. But now she saw a more dangerous reality. He was a desperate man, willing to sacrifice innocent people to protect himself. And desperation had destroyed everything around him. My mother doesn't even know the full truth, Ava whispered. She still believes the company investigation is just a misunderstanding. Olivia looked toward the hotel windows, where flashing police lights reflected against the glass outside. The entire Mercer family was collapsing alongside Daniel. Ava suddenly reached into her purse again and pulled out another smaller folder. There's more. Olivia opened it carefully. Inside were printed emails between Daniel and several Weston executives discussing Olivia directly after her termination. One sentence stood out immediately. She's too respected internally. We need people to stop trusting her before she talks. Another email suggested spreading rumors about Olivia being emotionally unstable. Another encouraged managers to quietly blacklist her from future industry opportunities. Olivia felt anger rise slowly in her chest again. Not because she hadn't known already. Because seeing it written so clearly made the cruelty impossible to ignore. They didn't just remove her from the company. They tried to erase her entire future. Ava watched Olivia carefully. I argued with him about it, she said quietly. We fought constantly after that. Olivia looked up. You knew they were lying about me? Yes. And you said nothing. Ava's face filled with shame instantly. I was scared of him too. That answer lingered heavily between them. Fear again. Every person connected to Weston Dynamics seemed controlled by fear in one way or another. Employees feared losing jobs. Executives feared exposure. Families feared collapse. And Daniel Mercer feared losing power more than anything. Ava slowly stood from the couch and walked toward the window overlooking the city below. He used to be a good father, she whispered. Olivia remained seated silently. When I was younger, he worked non-stop to give us everything. He cared about people. Employees respected him. But after my mother got sick, something inside him changed. Outside, reporters continued shouting questions while cameras flashed endlessly beneath the hotel entrance. Ava stared at the chaos below. He became obsessed with control, she said quietly. Every lie created another lie. Every secret made him more paranoid. Olivia finally spoke softly. That still doesn't excuse what he did. Ava nodded immediately. I know. The sadness in her voice sounded genuine. For the first time since beginning her revenge against Weston Dynamics, Olivia felt something unexpected. Not sympathy for Daniel, but sadness for the people trapped beside him while he destroyed himself. Ava turned back toward Olivia slowly. He's asking for a lawyer already. He still thinks he can survive this somehow. Olivia almost laughed bitterly. Daniel Mercer spent years believing power protected him from consequences. Even now, after public humiliation and arrest, part of him still believed he could escape accountability. But some damage couldn't be hidden anymore. Not after tonight. Ava picked up her purse carefully. I just wanted you to know the truth before the media twists everything even more. Olivia stood as well. Thank you for telling me. Ava hesitated near the doorway before speaking one last time. My father hated you because you reminded him of the person he used to be, before everything went wrong. Then she quietly walked away, leaving Olivia alone inside the dim hotel lounge, while police sirens echoed faintly somewhere beyond the city streets below. The days after the investor gala felt strangely quiet for Olivia Carter, as if the entire city was still processing what had happened. News channels replayed clips from the event non-stop. Analysts debated Weston Dynamics' future on financial programs, and social media turned Daniel Mercer's downfall into a global trending topic. For the first time in years, Olivia's name was no longer associated with humiliation or rumors. Instead, it was connected to exposure, accountability, and control. But Olivia didn't celebrate. She worked. Every hour of chaos inside Weston Dynamics created new opportunities for deeper investigation. While authorities handled the criminal case, Olivia focused on rebuilding the company's structure and identifying everyone involved in the corruption network. Emails were reviewed again. Financial transactions were traced across multiple international accounts. Internal communications were analyzed line by line. And the more she uncovered, the clearer it became that Daniel Mercer was only one part of a much larger system. Several senior executives had actively participated in the fraud. Some had helped design the false reporting systems. Others had approved illegal transfers silently while publicly pretending to support transparency. A few had even benefited personally from offshore accounts funded through company money. Olivia sat inside her office late one evening reviewing a detailed report when Ethan Cole entered quietly. You need to see this, he said. He placed a file on her desk. Olivia opened it slowly. Inside were records of salary bonuses and internal promotions tied directly to employees who had spread false rumors about her after her termination. People who publicly mocked her unemployment were secretly rewarded by Daniel Mercer for protecting the company's image. Olivia stared at the document silently. So it wasn't just Daniel, she said finally. Ethan shook his head. He built a culture around it. A culture where loyalty meant silence and survival meant participation. Olivia closed the file carefully. Prepare termination notices for everyone involved. Ethan hesitated slightly. That includes some senior staff. I know. He studied her expression for a moment before nodding. I'll handle it. When Ethan left, Olivia remained alone in the office, staring out at the city skyline. Everything she had endured suddenly felt less like isolated betrayal and more like systemic corruption built to protect itself. That realization didn't bring satisfaction. It brought clarity. Meanwhile, across the city, Daniel Mercer sat inside a federal holding facility, awaiting preliminary hearings. His once powerful reputation had collapsed completely. Lawyers visited him daily, but most advice revolved around plea negotiations and damage control rather than defense. Yet even now, Daniel refused to fully accept defeat. He still believed something would change. That belief shattered the day Olivia received an unexpected message request through her legal team. It was from Daniel. I need to see you, the message read. Ethan immediately advised against any contact. He's trying to manipulate the narrative, he said firmly. You don't owe him anything. Olivia remained quiet for a long moment. Then she responded. Set it up. The meeting took place 2 days later inside a controlled visitation room at the detention facility. Thick glass separated visitors from inmates, while security monitored every movement. Daniel Mercer entered slowly wearing a plain gray outfit instead of his usual tailored suits. The confidence he once carried was gone. His posture looked heavier, his face thinner, and his eyes constantly restless. When he saw Olivia sitting across the glass partition, he paused briefly. Then he sat down. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. You didn't have to destroy everything. Olivia looked at him calmly. I didn't destroy anything, she replied. You did. A faint, bitter laugh escaped him. You bought the company just to ruin me. Olivia's expression remained steady. No. I bought it because people like you shouldn't control systems built on lies. Daniel leaned forward slightly. You think this ends with me? Olivia studied him carefully. It already has. That answer seemed to frustrate him more than anger. He shook his head slowly. You don't understand what happens when companies like this fall apart. Jobs disappear. Families suffer. You've created collateral damage you don't even see. Olivia didn't react immediately. Then she spoke quietly. You already created that damage. I'm just making it visible. Daniel's hands tightened slightly. For the first time, he looked uncertain. You think you're better than me? Olivia leaned forward slightly toward the glass. No. I think I stopped lying to myself. Silence followed. A guard standing nearby shifted slightly, watching the interaction carefully. Daniel looked away for a moment before speaking again, but this time his voice was lower. I was trying to protect my family. Olivia didn't respond immediately. Ava's words from the hotel replayed briefly in her mind. Desperation. Illness. Fear. Gambling. Debt. All reasons Daniel used to justify choices that destroyed other people. But justification wasn't innocence. Olivia finally spoke. Protecting your family doesn't require destroying someone else's life to do it. Daniel looked down for a moment. Then back up. I didn't expect it to go this far. That's what everyone says after they get caught, Olivia replied calmly. His expression hardened slightly. You were never supposed to survive after what you discovered. The honesty in his voice was chilling. Olivia didn't look away. And yet I did. That single statement created a long silence between them. Daniel studied her carefully, as if trying to understand how everything had reversed so completely. You're enjoying this, he said finally. Olivia paused briefly before answering. No. That answer confused him. Then why do it? Olivia leaned back slowly in her chair. Because for years I believed people like you controlled outcomes. That reputations could be destroyed without consequences. That truth didn't matter as long as power protected lies. She looked directly at him. You prove me wrong. Daniel stared at her silently. And now? He asked. Olivia stood slowly from her chair. Now you face what you built. She turned slightly toward the exit before stopping. One more thing. Daniel looked up. Olivia spoke without emotion. Don't mistake accountability for revenge. Then she walked out of the visitation room, leaving Daniel Mercer sitting alone behind the glass as reality finally settled in around him without anyone left to protect him anymore. Weston Dynamics did not recover overnight. Even after Daniel Mercer's arrest and the public exposure of fraud, the company remained unstable, like a structure built on cracked foundations. Investors were cautious, employees were uncertain, and the entire corporate environment felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to see whether it would collapse completely or slowly rebuild itself under new leadership. Olivia Carter did not rush the process. She understood that destruction was easy, but rebuilding trust required precision. Every department inside Weston Dynamics went through restructuring. External auditors were brought in to review years of financial records. Contracts were renegotiated. Internal policies were rewritten from scratch. Entire management layers were replaced gradually to remove anyone linked to the previous corruption network. And still, something strange kept bothering Olivia. Daniel Mercer was gone, but the system he created had not fully disappeared. There were gaps in records, missing approvals, unexplained transfers that pointed toward someone else still operating quietly within the company before the collapse. Someone who had not been fully exposed during the Gala investigation. That uncertainty stayed in Olivia's mind long after most people considered the case closed. One afternoon, while reviewing archived HR records inside her office, Ethan Cole entered holding a sealed envelope. "You're not going to like this," he said. Olivia looked up. "What is it?" He placed it on the desk. It came from internal audit. They found inconsistencies in termination records and employee evaluations from the last 2 years. Olivia opened the envelope slowly. Inside were performance reviews and disciplinary files that did not match official company histories. Some employees who had been promoted appeared to have identical evaluation patterns tied to a single approving manager. But the name at the top of those approvals was not Daniel Mercer. It was Marcus Hill. Olivia paused. Marcus had been one of her closest friends during her time at Weston Dynamics. He had also been one of the first people to stop responding to her after the rumors began spreading. At the time, she assumed he had simply chosen distance for self-preservation like many others. But these records suggested something else entirely. Ethan studied her expression carefully. "You recognize the name?" "Yes." Olivia replied slowly. "He was part of your team, right?" Olivia nodded slightly but didn't speak immediately. She continued reading. The files showed that Marcus had been involved in approving internal narratives about employee reputations. He had also signed off on communication strategies that directly influenced how Olivia was portrayed after her termination. Not only had he failed to defend her, he had actively participated in shaping the story that destroyed her credibility. Olivia closed the file calmly. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "Based on timestamps," Eden said. "Since before your termination." Silence filled the room. For Olivia, this was different from Daniel Mercer. Daniel had been the center of power. Everything revolved around him. But Marcus had been closer. Personal. Trusted. Someone who knew her work ethic, her loyalty, and her character. Yet he still chose silence, or worse, participation. That realization felt heavier than expected. Over the next few days, Olivia ordered a deeper internal audit specifically targeting employee involvement in reputational manipulation. What they uncovered confirmed her concerns. Marcus Hill had not just been passive during her downfall. He had actively contributed to it in subtle but significant ways. He had spread internal suggestions questioning her stability. He had supported HR narratives framing her as difficult under pressure. He had helped reinforce the idea that her termination was justified due to performance issues, even though records showed she consistently exceeded expectations. The betrayal was not loud, it was quiet. Systematic. And that made it more dangerous. One evening, Olivia received a message request. It was from Marcus. "Can we talk?" She stared at the screen for a long time without responding. Eventually, she agreed. They met in a small, quiet cafe far from the corporate district. Marcus arrived early, looking noticeably tense. He kept adjusting his sleeves and avoiding eye contact with anyone around him. When Olivia arrived, he stood up immediately. "Thank you for coming," he said. She didn't respond with warmth or hostility, just observation. "You knew," she said calmly after sitting down. Marcus froze slightly. "I didn't know everything," he replied quickly. "That's not what I asked." A long silence followed. Marcus exhaled heavily and looked down at the table. "I knew enough," he admitted finally. Olivia's expression didn't change. "Enough to stop it." Another silence. Marcus nodded slightly, almost ashamed. "Yes." That single word confirmed everything. Olivia leaned back in her chair slowly. "Why didn't you?" Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "Because I thought it would protect me too," he said quietly. Daniel was powerful. People who opposed him didn't stay in the company long. Olivia listened without interruption. "I told myself it wasn't my fight," he continued. "I convinced myself you would handle it or move on. I didn't think things would escalate like that." Olivia studied him carefully. "And when they did escalate?" Marcus hesitated. "I was already involved in too many things. If I spoke up, I would have been exposed too." That was the truth behind many corporate betrayals. Not hatred, not direct malice, but fear of consequence. Olivia looked away briefly toward the cafe window where people passed outside living ordinary lives. "So you chose silence," she said. Marcus nodded, yes. Silence stretched between them again. Finally, Marcus spoke more softly. I never thought it would destroy you like that. I thought it would just pass. Olivia returned her gaze to him. It didn't pass, she said. It became my life for months. Marcus lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. The apology sounded real, but late. Olivia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she thought about everything that had happened since her termination. The humiliation, the isolation, the rumors, the financial stress, the nights spent rebuilding her life from nothing while others laughed at her downfall, and now she was sitting across from someone who had watched part of it unfold and chose self-preservation instead of truth. Finally, she spoke. Apologies don't undo decisions. Marcus nodded slowly. I know. Olivia stood up from her seat. But accountability does. Marcus looked up quickly. What does that mean? Olivia remained calm. It means you won't be part of Weston Dynamics going forward. His face tightened. You're firing me? You removed yourself the moment you chose silence, she replied. Marcus didn't argue. He already knew. As Olivia turned to leave, Marcus spoke one last time. Do you hate me? She paused briefly but didn't look back. No, she said quietly. I just understand you. Then she walked out of the cafe, leaving Marcus sitting alone as the realization settled that survival had come at the cost of everything he thought he was protecting, and everything he thought he had escaped from was already gone before he even realized it. A year after the collapse of Weston Dynamics, the city no longer spoke about Daniel Mercer every day. The news cycle had moved on, new corporate scandals had replaced old ones, and public attention had shifted elsewhere. But inside the company itself, the transformation was still unfolding slowly. Like a system learning how to function after years of corruption had been removed. Olivia Carter stood inside her office on the top floor of the rebuilt headquarters, watching the morning light spread across the city skyline. The same building that once symbolized humiliation for her now represented control, responsibility, and consequence. Weston Dynamics had been stabilized under her leadership, but it was no longer the same company that had destroyed her life. It was cleaner now, smaller, more accountable, and far more transparent. Employees moved differently in the building these days. There was less fear in their expressions and more focus in their work. The culture had changed deliberately, not through slogans or speeches, but through strict enforcement of ethics and structure. Every financial decision was traceable. Every executive action required accountability. Every department operated under oversight that prevented the kind of hidden corruption that once thrived there. Yet despite the success, Olivia never fully relaxed, because she understood something most people ignored. Power didn't eliminate risk. It only changed its shape. One morning, while reviewing quarterly performance reports, her assistant entered quietly and placed a notification on her desk. There's someone here to see you, she said. Olivia looked up briefly. Who? The former landlord of your old apartment. For a moment, Olivia said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. Send him in. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man stepped into her office wearing a nervous smile that didn't match his posture. This was the same man who, years earlier, had questioned whether she could afford rent after the rumors about her unemployment had spread. He looked uncomfortable now. Miss Carter, he said carefully. I hope I'm not disturbing you. You are, Olivia replied calmly. But go ahead. He swallowed and adjusted his jacket. I heard about your position here, and I wanted to congratulate you. I also wanted to discuss some potential investments. I've been exploring commercial properties and thought, Olivia interrupted him gently. You thought I might be useful to you now. The man paused, caught off guard. I didn't mean it like that. Olivia leaned back in her chair. You did, just more politely this time. Silence followed. The man shifted uncomfortably before speaking again. I was wrong about you before. Olivia studied him carefully. You were uninformed before, she corrected. There's a difference. He nodded quickly. Yes, of course. He hesitated before continuing. I hope we can work together in the future. Olivia looked at him for a moment longer, then responded without emotion. Maybe. The man left shortly after, still unsure whether the meeting had gone well or poorly. Olivia didn't care either way. She returned her attention to the reports in front of her. Moments like that had become common. People who once dismissed her now sought access, partnerships, and favor. Former colleagues sent polite messages. Investors requested meetings. Industry professionals who had ignored her before suddenly remembered her name. But Olivia had learned something through everything she had endured. Respect gained through fear of success was not the same as respect built on truth. Her phone buzzed later that afternoon with a message from Ethan Cole. "We finalized the last legal closure from the Mercer case," it read. "Everything is officially resolved." Olivia stared at the message for a moment before setting the phone down. Resolved was a strange word. Daniel Mercer had been sentenced months earlier, after multiple fraud charges were proven in court. His legal downfall had been swift once the full financial network was exposed. Several other executives had also been convicted or permanently removed from corporate roles. Weston Dynamics had survived, but only after losing almost all of its former leadership structure. And yet, for Olivia, closure did not feel like an ending. It felt like distance. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave the office, her assistant approached again with another unexpected message. "There's a visitor outside," she said softly. Olivia frowned slightly. "I don't have any scheduled meetings." "I know." He didn't ask for one. Something in her tone made Olivia pause. "Who is it?" The assistant hesitated. "Daniel Mercer's wife." Olivia remained still for a moment. Then she nodded once. "Let her in." A few minutes later, Ava Mercer entered the office. She looked different from the last time Olivia had seen her. Less broken, more composed, but still carrying the weight of everything that had happened. She held a small envelope in her hands. Olivia stood up slightly from her chair. "Ava." Ava gave a small nod. "I didn't come to argue," she said quietly. Olivia gestured toward a seat, "Then sit." Ava did. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Ava placed the envelope on the desk. "This is from my father." Olivia didn't open it immediately. "What is it?" "A statement," Ava replied. "He wanted me to deliver it personally." Olivia opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter. The words were simple. Not defensive. Not manipulative. Just acknowledgement. Daniel Mercer admitted responsibility for what had happened. He did not excuse his actions or attempt to minimize them. He wrote about fear, pressure, and poor decisions, but ultimately accepted that none of it justified the harm caused to Olivia or others inside the company. Olivia finished reading and placed the letter back on the desk. Ava watched her carefully. "He knows it doesn't fix anything," she said quietly. "No," Olivia replied. "It doesn't." Ava nodded. "I just wanted you to know he understands now." Olivia looked at her for a moment. "Understanding comes late sometimes," she said. Ava's eyes lowered slightly. "I'm trying to rebuild my life," she added. "Outside of everything that happened." "That's good," Olivia replied simply. Ava stood slowly. "Thank you for listening." As she turned to leave, Olivia spoke one final time. "Ava." She stopped and looked back. "Your choices don't have to define you the same way his did." Ava nodded quietly, then left the office. Olivia remained standing for a long moment after the door closed. Outside the window, the city continued moving as it always had. Lights turned on across buildings, traffic flowed through streets, and people lived ordinary lives shaped by decisions they would never fully understand. Olivia returned to her desk and looked once again at the letter sitting in front of her. Then she placed it inside a drawer and closed it carefully. They told everyone she was unemployed, broken, and finished. They turned her silence into weakness and her disappearance into a story of failure. But what they never understood was that silence was never surrender. It was preparation. While they laughed, Olivia Carter rebuilt her life piece by piece in ways no one could see. While they spread rumors, she built influence quietly in the background, And while they assumed she had fallen, she was already positioning herself for a return they could never predict. In the end, revenge was never just about exposure or power. It was about truth finally rising above perception. Every lie had an expiration date, and every system built on arrogance eventually creates its own collapse. Olivia didn't just reclaim her name. She changed the rules of the world that tried to erase her.